Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Today, I want to talk to those who find themselves stuck. Maybe you are stuck. Maybe you're in relationship with some people who find themselves stuck. And a lot of times those are financial things that we feel stuck in, but a lot of times it's bigger than that. And the idea of change can be terrifying. Getting unstuck can be scarier in many ways than just staying stuck and kind of submitting to that lack of options, that sense of obligation, that sense of I don't have a choice, this is just what I have to do. And those thoughts become self-fulfilling. We stay stuck. And so I want to talk about the fact that change takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of chutzpah. It is a really scary step to take, but it is the only way to get unstuck. What we want to make sure of, though, is that the changes that we're making, the decisions that we're making, are actually going to lead to the freedom that we're trying to get. A lot of times we'll make changes just to make changes, but they don't actually change anything, if that makes any sense. And so let's talk through that. If this is you, if you are in this place of stuck and you feel hopeless, you feel like you've banged your head against this same brick wall so many times and there's just not much you can do, I want to tell you there is hope. And if this is a friend of yours or a family member of yours, or if you're leading a church community and you have someone in that community that is that this feels like it's aimed at, I want to encourage you to be patient and kind and warm in that conversation. A lot of times when we're stuck, if people come along and say, well, just, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, do the thing, make the hard decision, that's actually not super helpful. And so today, I want to just kind of highlight the fact that a lot of times, financially speaking, when we feel this sense of stuck, it's a lot of times related to our careers, to our household situation. We find ourselves feeling obligated to stay in the situations that we're in, or we find ourselves resenting those situations, those circumstances, because we see them as the reason why we're uncomfortable. We see them as the reason why we feel unfulfilled. We feel dissatisfied, discontent. Those are really hard cycles to break. And when we think particularly about the house that we live in, the career that we're working, the choices that we have made in the past that have led to the present, we feel like we don't have any optionality. This is just what it is. This is just what it's always going to be like. And those thoughts lead to a sense of hopelessness that feeds on itself. We feel trapped. We feel like we are going to be experiencing this discontent and this dissatisfaction perpetually. And that is really discouraging. Let's talk about what it takes to actually face the changes that we might need to make. The most important aspect, I think, of the changes is making sure we recognize that everything is on the table. So often we tell ourselves, well, I have to do this. I have to keep working in this job. I mean, I took out all those student loans to get this degree for this specific job. I don't have a choice but to keep being a nurse or keep being a lawyer or keep doing the thing because this is what I aimed at. I have to do it. I don't have any choice there. That's not true. Or, I don't have a choice but to work these extra hours and this overtime because I got to pay for this house that we bought, and I don't have a choice but to keep living in this house. I have to keep paying for this oversized, overexpensive home because we bought it. We're stuck in it. That's also not true. Many times we see these things as immovable objects, and they're totally movable. We just don't tell ourselves that they're options. And so then we're stuck trying to manage inside the things that we see as options. So let me clarify that for you. Let's say that you've told yourself, I don't have an option. I have to work this career, and I don't have an option. I have to stay in this house. And so that means the only way that I can get some freedom in my spending plan, the only way that I can actually get some breathing room is if we never go out, we never have fun, we never enjoy anything, we never go on vacation, we never do any of these things that we would love to do. But we can't do those things because we have to stay in this house. We have to keep paying for this. We have to stay in this career. I have to keep doing this. Isn't that interesting? That the option of doing the things we love and that we're passionate about and that we're excited about gets clouded. That's what we give up first because we feel obligated to stay in the thing that's costing us too much or is taking too much of our time or is preventing us from doing those things. We don't put that on the table as an option. So changing career is not an option. But continuing to work 80 hours a week and not taking vacation and not enjoying and not having any fun, that's the option we choose. So I have to keep doing this, which means we don't eat out and we don't go anywhere. It's mind-boggling to me how often we get stuck in those thought loops that prevent us from really evaluating the situation fairly and making decisions that might actually lead to thriving and delight. The first thing we give up is our thriving and our delight in order to stay stuck in the thing that we're frustrated that we're stuck in. It's amazing to me. So the most important thing is to put all the options on the table and recognize you don't have to do anything. None of this is an obligation. All of it is a choice. And so if you find yourself stuck and you're saying things like, I have to work in this career because it's what my degree is in, change that thought. What I challenge myself to do is replace any phrase that starts with I have to I choose to. Because that actually gets your power back. You get to actually face the reality that you are choosing that. You're not obligated to do it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to feed your kids. Now, the consequences are horrible if you don't, but you don't have to. You choose to because you don't want the consequence of not doing it, right? The same is true with these other things. You could move. You have the option to get out of this house. And you may say, oh, but I can't because we're underwater on the mortgage, or we'd have to put so much into it to get it ready to sell, or we'd have to blah, 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 blah. Those are all also choices. Those are options. You may be choosing to stay in the house because you don't want the consequences of what it would take to get out of it, but at least you recognize you've chosen it. You had the option and you picked this one. You picked staying. Or maybe when you fairly evaluate it, you say, actually, it'd be worth it. Because if we have to put a little bit of money into painting and getting it up to snuff in order to sell it, but then we could right size our monthly expense for the rest of time, that might be a wise choice. But we don't even give ourselves that choice because we feel obligated. We feel like we don't have that choice. And that is the starting point. All of it is a choice. What would you choose if you were completely open to changing anything and everything? None of these things are immovable. It may be that the consequence of moving them is too much to bear, and that's okay, but at least you've fairly evaluated that choice as a choice rather than resenting it as I have to or I'm obligated to. That makes all the difference. You don't have to do anything. What are you choosing? One of the hardest things about that conversation with yourself is that your brain will very quickly go to all the money you've already sunk into it. So with the career, for example, you'll say, well, I put, I've got $80,000 in student loans to get this specific degree to work in this specific career that it turns out I don't actually enjoy. I don't like it. I don't like the work. I don't like the hours. I don't like anything about it, but I'm stuck in it because I put this money into it. That is a sunk cost. That is something that has happened in the past. And yes, it may be painful to make a transition, to change to something else that money doesn't actually help you. You put all the money into it and you may not actually be using that to your advantage, but that doesn't mean it's not an option to make a change. Sunk costs are called sunk costs for a reason. They're already done. They should not automatically be what makes the decision for you. We want to evaluate choices point forward, meaning from today going forward, what is the best opportunity? What's the best decision to make? Don't talk yourself into a sense of obligation because of a sunk cost. Well, we put that addition on the house that, we'll never get the money back for it. That doesn't matter. That's a sunk cost. If you can't sustain the house that you're living in, if the home that you are living in is causing you to have to work 2 jobs, is causing your family to not be thriving, is putting you in a position where you are not enjoying life because you're constantly having to sacrifice everything to maintain a house, it doesn't matter that there was a sunk cost involved in that house. You still have the choice to move to a different situation where your family can thrive. And we talk ourselves out of that option because of money that's already been spent, money that's already been, quote unquote, wasted. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you are making the wisest choice for you and for your family from this point forward. And what has happened in the past does not influence what is best for you in the future. And so we need to wrestle those conversations. We need to work through that decision matrix without the influence of these sunk costs constantly telling us we don't have a choice. We absolutely do. When we are evaluating these options to become unstuck, we want to make sure that the change that we're making will actually lead to freedom. So if we move from one house to another, but the cost is about the same monthly, we aren't going to find the freedom that we're looking for. If we move from one career to another, but the commitment, the hours, the income, nothing really changes, what are we actually getting? What I mean by that is we may change things that don't actually change anything. And I see this happen all the time. People are discontent in their current career, and they change to another career that doesn't actually look a whole lot different, doesn't change their income, doesn't change their work-life balance, doesn't really put them in a place where they're thriving, but it's different. And so they changed just for change's sake, but they actually didn't move their family forward. And so we need to be really honest when we're evaluating these things. When we're making these changes, are they actually getting back the monthly margin that we need in our spending plan, the ability to breathe easier? Are they gaining back space for our family to engage and enjoy each other? Or are we just making a change? Because what happens is we end up making all these changes. And this is where I see people that move from career to career to career, and they're constantly dissatisfied, constantly discontent, and they're the common denominator. They're bringing themselves to all of those places, and what they are changing is not changing anything. And so we've got to make sure that the change that we're making will actually get us unstuck. Because the worst thing we can do is give our brain evidence after we make a change that we're still stuck in the same spot. because it will become this self-defeating, hopeless cycle that confirms itself, that gives us proof that it's right, that we'll always be stuck, that it's never going to be better. Well, part of the reason why that happened is because the change that we made didn't actually change anything. And so we need to do the work to figure out, what do we really need to change? We need to take a downshift in the hours that we work. And that comes along with a downshift in the income, let's say. Well, then we need to be looking at careers that will actually accomplish that goal. And we may also need to change our living situation because of that loss of income. All of those changes can be really big upheavals for your family. It better work. You better be on the other side of that, gaining what you thought you were going to gain. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of resentment in the family. If you uproot everybody to move them to a different situation and find out it's the same situation as it always was, then all we've done is rip relationships apart, change things that really didn't need to be changed because nothing has actually been accomplished. And so this is a family conversation. This is not a conversation that mom and dad have on their own and then make these decisions in isolation. The kids need to understand, hey, this is what we're gaining back. If dad makes this change in career and we make this change in our living situation, or whatever the circumstance is, this is what we're going to get. I'm going to be home more often. I'm not going to travel as much for work. I'm going to be present for dinners. It's going to be great. I'm going to be able to coach your baseball team or whatever. These are the things that we're going to do differently as a result of this change. Your kids need to be in on that conversation. One, we want to make sure that it's something that they're excited about, that they see the value of the change, that there is a benefit to them and they know this is worth it. But two, they now have a place to hold you accountable, so that if you make this change, but they're not seeing you at the dinner table, or you're traveling just as much as you were before, they can remind you why this change was made. Hey, remember, the point of this was so that you would be home more, and you're not. So what happened? What boundaries do we need to put in place? What conversations do you need to have with your new employer to make sure that we get what we thought we were getting? Right? That is the work that needs to be done as a whole family, so that everybody's on the same page and we can all hold each other accountable to the change we actually want to see. Because it is really easy to fall back into what we're used to because it's normal. And if what we're used to is overextended work hours and overextended spending plans and credit card debt and exhaustion and houses that we can't afford and all the things that we're doing, and then we just shift and do the same thing again, then we're going to feel really hopeless in that change. And what that does is it makes us fear making change. One of the reasons why people stay stuck is because they've changed things in the past a lot of times that didn't actually change anything. And so their assumption is if they make change, they'll still be stuck. But that's because those changes didn't actually matter. They didn't actually do what they hoped they would do. And so, they'll change things on the edges. They'll stop spending money on vacations. They'll stop spending money on eating out. They'll do things that are really not all that valuable in the long run without changing the big things. And then they're only giving their brain evidence that change doesn't help, that change doesn't actually change anything. It doesn't get me unstuck. I'm still stuck. And so because they fear change, they won't even evaluate what needs to change anymore. And they stay stuck. It's so frustrating when you're in that cycle. And I will say, a lot of times it is an outside force that needs to be involved, whether that's you as leader in the community and in the church setting, in a small group, whether it's a friend of yours that needs to tell you the truth, that what you're changing is not actually going to change anything. We need to be able to talk with each other about what we think we're going to get from this change. I think if I change careers, I think if I move houses, I think if we do these things, we're going to get this back Check me on that. Is that right? Am I totally missing something? Am I going to end up in the same place I already am? I'm just moving things around, but I'm not actually changing anything. Call me to account on that. Tell me the truth, because I don't want to do it and then end up in the same place. And so we do need that outside influence that can give us wise counsel and tell us if what we're planning on doing will actually work. I do want to say, as a side note, none of this works if we don't have a really strong handle on what our life actually costs. If you are not tracking your spending in a very detailed way where you know these really are the rocks that are in the way, these are the things that are problematic. Our house does cost too much. Our cars are killing us. Those payments are absolutely wrecking our spending plan. Like, if we don't know what those rocks are, we will be moving the wrong things, and we're messing around with pebbles when we need to move boulders. And so, as a starting point, before we even get to the place of daydreaming about what we would like to see different, we need to understand our reality today. Don't change things you don't understand. First, seek to understand that reality, and then the change that you need to make will become obvious. But a lot of times I'll see people moving things, changing things, but they don't really know why they're stuck. They don't really know what the real problems are. And so they start changing things that they're guessing are the problems while the real issues stay in place. The real issue is that sending your kids to that school is unsustainable. You can't afford it. The real issue is that if you're going to continue to stay in this house, it's the property taxes that are killing you. It's these other things. Like, we don't really fully understand what those moving parts are. And so we end up making decisions to sustain the things that are actually unsustainable. And we change the things that we could absolutely afford. And we think that's the problem. So track very intentionally, understand where the problems really are and what the big boulders are that need to be moved before you move anything. And then invite your family into that conversation, invite trusted friends into that conversation to evaluate it with you and make sure, if I move this boulder, if I make this significant change, am I right in thinking I'm going to get back what I've been missing? Is this really going to work? And then if it is, know that that is an option. You don't have to do anything. You choose. You get to choose what will lead to the thriving of your family and you stepping into faithful stewardship and honoring God in a deeper way with all of the resources that He's given you to manage. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you all have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.